My name is Ava James, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the steady hand, the reliable one, the older sister, who always had everything figured out. My sister Elena was the dreamer, the artist who could light up a room with her laugh and charm the world with her bright ideas. I was the one who kept us tethered to reality, paying bills on time, cleaning up our childhood messes, and later covering her rent when her art degree didn't come with a paycheck. So when Elena called me one frosty December morning to say Ava, I said yes. He proposed, I didn't hesitate. I was thrilled for her. Ethan Carter, the charming, down-to-earth lawyer she'd been dating for 2 years, was good to her. Of course I said yes when she asked me to be her maid of honor. I can't do this without you, she'd said, her voice bubbling with excitement that warmed me all the way to my toes. I dove in head first, pouring my weekends into Pinterest boards and fabric swatches, researching everything from boutique florists to custom menus. I didn't mind the late nights or the extra hours. This was my sister's big day, and I wanted it to be perfect. But there's something they don't tell you about family dynamics, how quickly the ground can shift beneath your feet. It started at a family dinner one Sunday evening in February, just as winter was giving way to spring. Our mother, Diana, showed up late as usual, but with a thick, leather-bound wedding planner in hand. She barely said hello before announcing, "I've already put down a deposit for the Redwood Ballroom. It's the only date they had this summer, so we'll just have to make it work." Elena looked surprised, but also relieved. "Mom, that's so generous," she said, her eyes wide. But she didn't look at me. And just like that, the first crack appeared. I tried to brush it off. I thought we were still looking at venues. I offered carefully, not wanting to seem ungrateful. "We had a few options too." Diana cut me off with a sweet smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Ava, the Redwood book's up years in advance. You'll understand once you have your own wedding someday." I swallowed my retort. Diana had always been like this, decisive, controlling, always sure her way was best. Elena and I learned early to let her take the wheel to avoid a fight. Still, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that my role as maid of honor was already being overshadowed. Over the next few weeks, that feeling only grew. My carefully researched vendors were dismissed in favor of family friends Diana insisted were better suited. The elegant color palette Elena and I had chosen was deemed too somber. "We need something more vibrant, more festive," Diana declared, her word final. Whenever I voiced a concern, Elena's bright smile would fade. "It's fine, Ava," she'd say. "Mom's just really into this. It's easier to let her have her way." Easier became our mantra, but it didn't make it right. By April, my involvement had shifted from maid of honor to silent observer. I noticed my cousin Miranda creeping into photos on social media, holding color swatches I'd picked out, attending cake tastings I hadn't been invited to. Miranda had always wanted to be part of the in-crowd in our family, and now she was right there next to Elena while I watched from the sidelines. "Maybe it's because you're so busy with work," my boyfriend Caleb suggested one evening when I confessed my worries. I worked as a financial consultant in Boston, long hours, high stakes. But I'd always made time for Elena. "You've got a lot on your plate," he said gently, pulling me close. But in my gut, I knew it was more than just my schedule. Then, in May, came the moment that snapped the final thread of denial. My coworker Sadie, who happened to be friends with the owner of a local bridal boutique, asked, "How was Elena's dress appointment?" "Sandra said your sister found her dream gown." I froze coffee halfway to my lips. "Dress appointment," I managed to say. Sadie's brow furrowed. "At Whispering Lace yesterday, Sandra said your mom and sister spent hours there." I forced a smile and muttered something about work emergencies, but my chest felt hollow. Elena and I had spent entire nights as teenagers dreaming about our wedding dresses, pillowcases draped like veils, promises whispered about how we'd be there for each other, and she hadn't even told me. That night, I called her. My voice shook as I asked, "How was dress shopping?" There was a pause. "Oh, it was last minute," she said quickly. "Mom had an appointment, and Miranda was free to come. It wasn't supposed to be the final fitting, just, a quick peek." "You could have asked me?" I said softly. Elena's sigh crackled through the line. "Ava, don't make this a big deal. There's so much else to focus on. But it was a big deal. It was another fracture in the foundation of a sisterhood I thought was unshakable. Still, I tried to keep the peace. I paid the deposit for the photographer. I'd found the one Diana thought was too expensive. I ordered welcome baskets for out-of-town guests, even curated a surprise honeymoon package to Santorini, a luxury suite with ocean views, a private tour of hidden caves at sunset. I told myself that after the wedding, Elena and I would find our way back to each other. I didn't see then how quickly everything would spiral. It was an early summer evening when the dam finally broke. I was at a family dinner, refilling my water glass in the kitchen, when I heard Diana's voice drifting from the dining room. "Ava's always been difficult," she said. "She can't just let Elena have her moment. She's so controlling, always making it about herself." Miranda's voice joined in syrupy sweet. "Poor Elena. She deserves a break from that, especially now." I stood frozen glass shaking in my hand. My own mother, my cousin, painting me as the villain. That night, I cried to Caleb, the words tumbling out in a choked rush. What if they don't even want me at the wedding? What if they're planning to push me out altogether? He held me close, his hands gentle on my back. "Then you need to find out the truth, Ava. No more waiting for them to include you." He was right. It was time to confront the fracture, to see if what we had was strong enough to survive, or if I'd been holding on to a fantasy all along. The days that followed were a blur of doubt and quiet dread. My phone buzzed with texts from Elena about seating charts and playlist suggestions, but her messages were short and strangely hollow. When I offered ideas or asked questions, she'd reply hours later with a simple, "Thanks, I'll think about it." I could feel the distance stretching between us, like an invisible cord ready to snap. By the time Thursday arrived, our meeting day at my parents' house, I was vibrating with anxiety. Caleb offered to come with me, but I needed to face this alone. I needed to see the truth with my own eyes. I pulled up to the old colonial-style house, the one that had been both a haven and a battlefield all my life. I remembered summers playing tag in the yard with Elna, our laughter echoing down the block. I remembered Christmas mornings in matching pajamas, our mother watching with a tight smile that never quite reached her eyes. And now it felt like I was walking into enemy territory. Diana opened the door before I could even knock. She was dressed in her usual polished-style ivory blouse, pearl earrings glinting in the low light of the foyer. "Come in, Ava," she said, her tone cool and clipped. No hug, no warmth, just formality. I stepped inside, my pulse thrumming in my ears. The living room looked like a set for a play. My father, Robert, sat in his recliner, his face pinched and gray. Elena perched on the edge of the couch, her hands twisting in her lap. And there, in the spot that had always been mine during family talks, sat Miranda. She gave me a smug little smile, and I had to resist the urge to roll my eyes. I stood there for a moment, my heart hammering. "Elena," I said softly, "I thought we were going to talk about the wedding." Elena's eyes flicked up to mine, then down again. "That's why we're all here," she said, her voice small. Diana stepped forward, folding her arms. "There's something you need to understand about the wedding, Ava." The air in the room felt heavy, almost electric. I swallowed hard. "What is it?" She let out a sigh like I was a child who just wouldn't listen. "Your involvement has become problematic," she said. Each word was deliberate, sharp. "You're making this about you, Ava. Your opinions, your money, always trying to control everything." My mouth fell open. "That's not true. I've been trying to help to support Elena. I've paid for things I've—" "That's exactly it," Diana cut in, her voice rising. "Throwing your money around like it gives you the right to call the shots." I turned to Elena, desperate for her to speak. "Is that how you feel?" She hesitated, her lip trembling. It's just been really stressful, Ava," she whispered. "Every time you're involved, there's tension. I need this to be about me." My heart cracked. "Elena, I've only ever wanted to help." Miranda's voice cut through the moment like a knife. "Elena wants a drama-free wedding. You've made that impossible." The room seemed to tilt around me. My father shifted in his chair, but said nothing, his gaze fixed on the carpet. My mother's lips curved into a small, satisfied smile, like she'd finally won a long-fought battle. "So what are you saying?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Diana's eyes met mine, cold and unyielding. "We're saying you're not welcome at the wedding, Ava. Not as maid of honor, not as a bridesmaid, not even as a guest." The words hit me like a punch. My breath caught in my throat. "You're serious," I managed to choke out. Elena wouldn't look at me. Miranda smirked, and my mother just nodded. "It's for the best," Diana said calmly, as if she were discussing the weather. I felt like I was outside my own body, watching the scene unfold from a distance. I turned to my father, my last hope. "Dad, please. Say something." He lifted his eyes to mine, and for a moment I saw the regret there. But he just sighed and looked away. It was in that moment that something inside me shifted. The part of me that had always bent over backwards for my family, that had always tried to be the good daughter, the peacemaker. It snapped. "Okay," I said, my voice steady. "Good to know." I turned and walked out of that house, each step feeling heavier than the last. No one tried to stop me. No one called after me. The drive back to my apartment was a blur of city lights and tears I refused to let fall. When I got home, Caleb was waiting, his face full of concern. "What happened?" he asked, pulling me into his arms. I told him everything, my voice shaking. "They cut me out, Caleb. They're saying I'm too controlling, that I make everything about me. And Elena, she just sat there and let it happen." His jaw tightened. "That's not true, Ava. You've done nothing but support her." "Maybe," I said, my voice breaking. "But it doesn't matter. They've already decided who I am to them." He held me tighter, his breath warm against my hair. "So what are you going to do?" I pulled back, wiping my eyes. "I'm going to take back everything I've given. Every deposit, every reservation. I'm not going to let them take advantage of me anymore." The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table with a mug of cold coffee and a notebook. I made a list of everything I'd paid for photographer deposits, welcome baskets, the honeymoon package. Over $12,000 in total. My fingers trembled as I logged into my bank accounts, canceling transfers and pulling back funds. Each click felt like reclaiming a little piece of myself. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I blocked my mother's number. I blocked Miranda's too. When I was done, I turned off my phone completely. The sudden silence was jarring, but it felt like the first deep breath I'd taken in months. I spent the day in the city, wandering through the botanical gardens, letting the bright colors and fresh air wash over me. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel responsible for anyone else's happiness. But as I watched a group of kids chase each other along the paths, I couldn't help the ache in my chest. This wasn't how I'd imagined my sister's wedding. It wasn't how I'd imagined our lives. When I got home that evening, my inbox was full of missed calls and messages. But there was one from Elena, sent at 2:17 a.m., that stopped me cold. "I'm sorry, Ava. I didn't know. Please call me." I stared at the words for a long time, my thumb hovering over the call button. Part of me wanted to forgive her, to believe that she'd been caught in the middle. But another part of me was tired of bending, tired of breaking. I didn't call her back that night. Instead, I let the message sit there, a small flicker of hope in a world that suddenly felt so much darker. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake in the dim light of my bedroom, my mind replaying every word, every cold look. By dawn, I was still staring at the ceiling, my thoughts like shards of glass cutting deeper with each hour that passed. I poured myself a cup of coffee, hands trembling, and sat down at my kitchen table. The memory of my mother's words, "You're not welcome," echoed in my mind like a broken record. My phone buzzed on the counter, but I let it ring out. I couldn't face them yet. By mid-morning, I finally worked up the courage to check my messages. There were dozens of them, most from my mother, a few from Elena. My father had left a single short voicemail, "Ava, I'm sorry. Call me when you're ready." His voice was strained, as if he'd aged years in a single night. But it was the message from Elena that stopped me cold. "I didn't know, Ava. I swear I didn't. Please talk to me." It was simple but raw. I read it over and over, my heart twisting. Part of me wanted to believe her, but another part, the part that had watched her sit in silence while I was exiled, couldn't. Caleb tried to comfort me when he stopped by after work. "You're doing the right thing," he said softly as we sat on the couch. "You've always been there for Elena. You've gone above and beyond. If she can't see that, it's not your fault." I nodded, but the ache in my chest didn't fade. The next morning, I got a call from my bank. My mother had tried to access the account I'd used to pay for wedding expenses. She'd apparently tried to present herself as me, claiming she needed to finalize some payments. The representative said her story didn't add up, and they flagged the activity. My stomach turned to ice. It was one thing to be cut out emotionally, it was another to have my mother actively trying to take what was mine. That was the final straw. I gathered every receipt, every email, every contract I'd signed for the wedding. I made copies of everything, tucking them into a neat folder. Then I called Elena. "We need to talk," I said simply. There was a pause on the line, then a soft, "Yes, please." We agreed to meet at a quiet cafe downtown, away from our family, away from the memories of that house. When I walked in, Elna was already there, nursing a mug of tea. She looked small. Her shoulders hunched, her eyes rimmed with dark circles. She stood when she saw me. "Ava," she said, her voice cracking. I sat down across from her, my folder in front of me. "Elena, I need to know what's going on. No more half-truths." She nodded, swallowing hard. "I didn't know, Ava. Mom. She's been telling me things, showing me texts from you, saying you didn't want to be involved, that you thought my choices were stupid." My head snapped up. "Texts, Elena? I never said anything like that." "I know," she said quickly, her eyes welling up. "I know that now." But she showed me screenshots. She even had messages that looked like they were from you. And I believed her because she's our mom. I leaned back, stunned. My mother had forged messages from me. The level of betrayal made my stomach churn. "I should have trusted you," Elna whispered. But I was so overwhelmed. Mom was handling everything, and I thought maybe you were just done with me. My hands clenched into fists. "Elena, I've always been on your side. Always. I paid for your photographer, your baskets, your honeymoon. I did everything I could to make this day special for you. And you let her turn me into the villain." She flinched. "I know. And I'm so sorry, Ava. I didn't see it. But I do now. James and we started talking last night. He found emails that Mom had sent, pretending to be me. She was trying to make it look like I was the one pushing you away. James." The name cut through the haze of pain. "James knew, he does," now she said. "When he saw how upset I was, he started digging. He confronted Mom this morning. She lost it." I could imagine. Diana had never taken confrontation well. "What did she say?" "She said she was protecting me. That you were trying to overshadow my wedding. That you couldn't stand not being the center of attention." I let out a bitter laugh. "That sounds like her." Elena reached across the table, her fingers brushing mine. "I know I have no right to ask, but I need you there, Ava. At the wedding. Not just as my maid of honor, but as my sister." I stared at her hand. I wanted to take it. I wanted to forgive her. But the hurt was still too raw. "I need time," I said finally. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I understand." We sat there in silence, two sisters trying to rebuild something that had been shattered. When I got home, there was a message waiting on my voicemail. My father's voice, soft and regretful. "Ava, I'm sorry. I let her control everything for too long. I didn't stand up for you. I didn't stand up for anyone. If you're willing, I'd like to talk." I listened to it twice, my heart aching. My father had always been a quiet man, a peacekeeper. But maybe, just maybe, he was finally ready to speak up. That night, I called Caleb. "I need your help," I said. "I'm going to have a meeting. My father, Elena, James, anyone who needs to hear the truth." He was silent for a moment, then said, "Tell me when and where. I'll be there." The next day, I sent out the invitations, polite, neutral, but firm. "We need to talk," I wrote. "No more lies. No more secrets." As I sealed the last envelope, I felt a strange calm settle over me. For the first time in weeks, I felt powerful. not because I was controlling anything, but because I was done letting others control me. The meeting was set for Sunday evening at Aunt Caroline's house, a neutral ground. As I prepared my notes and gathered my evidence, I realized something I hadn't seen before. This wasn't just about Elena's wedding. This was about my whole life, about every time I'd been silenced, every time I'd been told to be smaller, quieter, easier. This was about reclaiming my voice. And I was ready. Sunday evening arrived with an uneasy calm, like the air before a thunderstorm. Aunt Caroline's house had always been a haven for me. Growing up, its warm yellow walls and cozy kitchen had been a refuge from the storms at home. But tonight, it felt like a stage set for a reckoning. I arrived early, a folder of documents clutched in my hand. Caleb was already there, greeting me with a steady, reassuring smile. "You've got this," he said quietly, squeezing my hand. Aunt Caroline welcomed me at the door, her expression gentle but resolute. "I'm proud of you for doing this, Ava," she said. "It's time the truth came out." As the clock in the hall ticked toward 7, the others began to arrive. My father was first, looking older than I remembered his eyes, tired but focused. He hugged me briefly, whispering, "I should have done this years ago." Elena and James arrived together, holding hands tightly. She gave me a tentative smile that spoke of 1,000 apologies. I nodded in return, my heart pounding. And then there was the final guest, my mother. She swept in like she owned the place. Her tailored coat impeccable, her perfume, a familiar floral scent that made my stomach churn. Her eyes flicked around the room, assessing, calculating. "What is this?" she asked, her tone light but sharp. "It's a chance for truth," I said, my voice calm, for everyone to hear it. We all gathered in the living room, the atmosphere crackling with tension. I took a deep breath and began. "I've brought everything I said," laying the folder on the coffee table. The canceled payments, the fake messages. The evidence that I was never trying to overshadow Elena. I was trying to support her. And the proof that you, Mom, have been manipulating this from the start. My mother's lips thinned. "Ava, this is ridiculous. You've always been dramatic." James spoke up, his voice steady. "Diana, I saw the emails. The messages you pretended were from Ava. The screenshots you took and showed Elena. You can't deny this." Diana's eyes narrowed, her voice still calm. "I was protecting my daughter from your interference. You've always been controlling Ava. It's not a crime for a mother to want the best for her child." I forced myself to breathe, to stay steady. "This isn't about wanting the best for Elena. It's about controlling everything. You turned her against me. You tried to make me the villain in my own sister's life." Elena's voice was shaky but determined. "Mom, you lied to me. You showed me texts that weren't real. You told me Ava didn't care, that she was trying to ruin my wedding. But it wasn't true." Diana scoffed. "You're too naive, Elena. You don't understand how Ava manipulates people." Aunt Caroline leaned forward, her voice cutting through the tension. "Diana, enough. I've watched you do this for years. To me, to Robert, to Ava. It ends tonight." My mother's mask slipped for a moment, a flash of rage in her eyes, before she smoothed her expression again. "You've always been jealous of me, Caroline," she said coldly. "Don't think I don't see it." My father finally spoke, his voice low but firm. "Diana, this isn't about Caroline. This is about how you've treated Ava. And it's about how I've let it happen." She turned to him, her mouth tightening. "You're siding with them now, after everything I've done for this family." His shoulders slumped. "I'm not siding with anyone. I'm done pretending everything's fine when it isn't. I'm done letting you hurt the people I love." A silence fell over the room, thick and heavy. My mother's eyes darted from face to face, searching for an ally. When she found none, her expression hardened. "You're all turning against me," she said, her voice trembling with anger. "After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me." I stood up, my heart pounding, but my voice steady. "This isn't repayment, Mom. This is the truth. And it's not going to stay hidden anymore." Elena took a step closer to me, her hand finding mine. "Ava is my sister, my maid of honor. She's the one I trust. If you can't accept that, then you can't be part of my wedding. For a moment, my mother looked stunned, as if the world had shifted beneath her feet. But then her face hardened into a cold mask. Fine, she said. If that's how you feel, then I want nothing to do with this farce of a wedding. She turned and stormed out her heels, clicking against the hardwood floor like gunshots. The silence that followed was deafening. Aunt Caroline let out a shaky breath. Well, that went about as expected. I sank into the couch, my hands trembling. Elena squeezed my hand, her eyes shining with tears. I'm so sorry, Ava. For everything. I knotted my throat too tight to speak. My father sat down heavily in his chair, his face pale. I let her do this for too long, he said quietly. I let her make me believe it was easier to stay silent. But it wasn't easier, it was just cowardice. I reached over and took his hand. Dad, I understand. But it's different now. We're different now. We sat there in the quiet, the storm finally passed. I felt a strange calm settle over me, a sense that the worst was over, that the truth had finally been spoken aloud. James broke the silence first. So, what now? He asked softly. Elena looked at me, her expression determined. Now we move forward, together. I nodded. Together. As we talked through the next steps, how to handle the wedding, how to move forward as a family, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't dared hope for relief. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't carrying this burden alone. Later that night, as Caleb drove me home, he reached over and squeezed my hand. I'm so proud of you, he said. You stood up for yourself. You stood up for what's right. I leaned my head against the window, watching the city lights blur by. It's not over, I said softly. She's not done. But I'm not afraid of her anymore. Caleb smiled, his eyes full of quiet confidence. And that's what makes all the difference. I closed my eyes and let the peace of that moment wash over me. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. In the days that followed the family meeting, I could feel the air itself had changed. Like a storm had cleared and left behind a hushed, cautious calm. But beneath that calm, I knew my mother was far from done. I woke up Monday morning to a flurry of calls from extended family members, some curious, some concerned, a few disapproving. My Uncle Peter left a terse voicemail telling me I should have let it go. My grandmother left a shaky message asking if I was feeling all right. But in the middle of it all was a text from my father. Stay strong. I'm with you. It was the first time in my life I truly believed it. Elna and I met at her apartment that evening. She looked tired but resolute. The bright artistic mess of her place, a half-finished painting in the corner, scattered tea mugs felt comforting after the tense sterility of my mother's home. I keep replaying that night in my head, she confessed, curling up on the couch beside me. Every word Mom said, every lie she told, and how I believed her. You weren't the only one, I said gently. She's been doing this for years. She nodded, biting her lip. James and I have been talking. We think it's time to set some boundaries. For real. No more letting her bulldoze everything. I smiled a little sadly. It's about time. As we talked, it became clear that the wedding itself, just 2 weeks away, was now a test of those boundaries. My mother had gone silent after storming out of Aunt Caroline's house, but we both knew that was temporary. She'd be back, and she wouldn't come quietly. And sure enough, 2 days later, the first email arrived. Subject, for the good of the family. It was from my mother, of course. Long paragraphs of polished prose, carefully balanced between wounded martyrdom and veiled threats. She claimed she'd only ever wanted the best for us, that she'd been misunderstood, that my behavior was deeply hurtful to her as a mother. And then the final line. If you persist in this division, I will be forced to reconsider my presence at the wedding entirely. I read it twice, my hands steady. Then I forwarded it to Elena without a word. Her reply came within minutes. Don't answer it. She's trying to pull you back in. I knew she was right, but it didn't make it any easier. That Friday, I found myself at a quiet cafe, trying to focus on work. My job had been a welcome escape, But even there, the shadows of my family loomed. When my phone buzzed again, I nearly didn't look. But the name on the screen made my breath catch. Rebecca, an old friend I hadn't spoken to in years. We'd been close once, but life had taken us in different directions. Her message was short but startling. I saw Diana today. She came to my office. Said some pretty crazy things about you. Call me? My heart pounded. I stepped outside the crisp air cutting through the fog of my thoughts. Rebecca answered on the first ring. She was at your office, I blurted. Yes, she said carefully. She told my boss that you were unstable, that you'd stolen money from the family, that you were having some sort of breakdown. Ava. It was bizarre. My boss didn't believe her, of course, but she caused a scene. My stomach twisted. She's trying to ruin me, I whispered. Rebecca's voice was kind but firm. I don't know what's going on, but I know you. You're not the person she's painting you as. Do you need me to talk to anyone at your job? Clear things up, I let out a shaky breath. No. Thank you. I'll handle it. I hung up and leaned against the brick wall of the cafe, my pulse racing. My mother wasn't just trying to sabotage the wedding anymore. She was coming for my life, my work, my reputation. The thought sent a jolt of icy fear through me, but also something else, a spark of defiance. That night, I sat with Caleb on my tiny balcony, the city skyline stretched out before us. She's not going to stop, I said quietly. Not until she's broken me. He looked at me, his eyes steady. But she's not going to win. I turned to him, tears brimming. How do you know? Because I've seen you, he said. You don't give up, Ava. And you're not alone this time. His words settled in my chest like a warm weight steadying me. The next day, I went to see my father. He looked older than ever, the lines on his face deeper, but his eyes were clear. We sat on the back porch, the soft scent of blooming lilacs in the air. I should have spoken up years ago, he said, his voice rough. I thought I was keeping the peace, but all I did was let her hurt you more. It's not just on you, Dad, I said gently. She's good at what she does. He sighed, rubbing his temples. I don't know if she can change, but I'm done letting her speak for me. I reached over and squeezed his hand. That's enough for me. As I drove home, I realized how much that moment meant. My father wasn't perfect, but he was finally seeing what I'd been fighting alone for so long. And that made me feel stronger, more certain. But the real test was still ahead. Elna's wedding was days away now, and my mother was still invited, though, under strict conditions. No decisions, no manipulations, no last-minute power grabs. Elena had made it clear, if she tries anything, she's out. I don't care if it's my wedding day. I'm done letting her control us. I believed her. I wanted to believe her. The night before the wedding, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. My phone buzzed once more, a single text from my mother. I hope you're happy with the mess you've made. I didn't answer. Instead, I put my phone face down, turned off the lamp, and took a deep breath. Tomorrow would be the hardest day yet. But I'd faced down every lie, every betrayal. And tomorrow, I would stand beside my sister, not because of what our mother wanted, but because of what we'd reclaimed for ourselves. My heart was steady. My mind was clear. And for the first time in a long time, I felt ready. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and impossibly clear, as if the universe itself had decided to grant us a day of calm after the storm. I woke early, the first rays of sunlight streaming through my window, and took a moment to just breathe. Today wasn't just about my sister's wedding, it was about the battle we'd fought and the boundaries we'd drawn. I arrived at the venue, the Redwood Ballroom, that once seemed like a battleground, but now felt like a place of hope just after 10. Elena was already there, surrounded by a small army of bridesmaids, hairstylists, and makeup artists. When she saw me, her face lit up. Ava, she whispered, hugging me tight. I'm so glad you're here. I wouldn't miss it, I said and meant it. As I helped her into her dress, a delicate gown of ivory lace, elegant and simple, I felt a rush of quiet pride. Not because I'd helped plan it, but because this day was no longer overshadowed by our mother's demands. It was Elena's and mine too, in a way, a reclaiming of what we'd always shared. Do you think she'll come? Elena asked softly, her eyes searching mine in the mirror. I paused, adjusting the veil. If she does, she knows the rules. And if she can't respect them, she won't stay. Elena nodded, her shoulders squaring. I'm ready. The ceremony itself was everything she'd hoped for. Simple, heartfelt, filled with laughter and tears in all the best ways. Her faces alight with a happiness that was real and hard-won. My father joined me at the edge of the dance floor, his face lined with pride. You did good, Ava, he said quietly. You stood up for her. And for yourself. I looked at him, my throat tight. So did you. He nodded, his eyes shining. I'm learning. But even in the midst of the celebration, there was a tension at the edges of the room, a sense of waiting, of what might happen if she walked in. And then, just as the sun was setting in a wash of gold through the windows, she did. My mother. She swept into the room like she always did, elegant and composed, as if nothing had happened. Conversations stuttered around her, the music suddenly too loud, too bright. She moved straight for me. Ava, she said, her voice smooth. May we speak? I took a breath, feeling the weight of the moment. We can speak, I said carefully. But there's nothing left to manipulate here. If you're here for Elena, be here for her. Otherwise, leave. For a moment, I thought she might argue, might launch into the old litany of wounds and accusations. But then she surprised me. Her shoulders slumped, her eyes flickering. I just wanted to see her happy, she murmured. I don't know. I held her gaze. You wanted control. But this isn't about you, not anymore. She opened her mouth, closed it, and then without another word, turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Elena joined me a moment later, her hand slipping into mine. She didn't stay, she said softly. I shook my head. She can't. Not when she can't play the role she wants to play. Elena leaned her head against my shoulder. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. I wrapped my arm around her. What matters is that you saw it, that we're here now. The rest of the night was a blur of music and laughter. My father danced with me, once his steps hesitant but joyful. James's mother hugged me tightly, whispering, "Thank you for being the sister she needed." And as the last song played, Caleb found me on the edge of the dance floor. Come dance with me, he said with a grin. I'm not much of a dancer, I protested, but he just pulled me close. You've been dancing through this whole mess for months, he said softly, his lips brushing my hair. Now let me lead. I laughed, tears in my eyes, and let him pull me into the music. For a moment, the world narrowed to the sound of our breathing and the warmth of his hands. For a moment, it was just peace. As the night wound down, Elena and I found ourselves alone on the balcony, the city spread out below like a sea of lights. She took my hand. Thank you, she said simply. For everything. I smiled, my heart full. Always. And I realized in that moment that this wasn't just the end of one chapter. It was the beginning of another one, where I knew my worth, where I demanded respect, where I didn't apologize for drawing my boundaries. 1 month later, life felt like it was finding its own rhythm again. Elena and James returned from their honeymoon with stories of hidden beaches and secret cafes. My father called me once a week, each conversation a little stronger, a little more real. And my mother, she stayed away, her silence speaking volumes. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. Caleb and I stood on my balcony one night, the air warm and soft. Do you regret how it all played out? He asked. I thought about it for a moment. No, I said honestly. It hurt, but it was necessary. I had to see the truth, and I had to choose myself. He smiled, his hand finding mine. Then, here's to new beginnings. We clinked our coffee mugs together, a quiet toast in the dark. If you've ever had to stand up to family manipulation, if you've ever had to reclaim your own worth in the face of those who can't see it, know this: you are not alone. Your voice matters. Your boundaries matter. And sometimes the greatest act of love you can offer to yourself, and to those who deserve it, is to stand firm. Have you ever had to fight for your worth like Ava? I'd love to hear your story. Drop a comment below. And if Ava's journey spoke to you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Because your story matters too, and it deserves to be heard.